Hi there. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me here today. This is a very, very exciting topic, and well done, Bonnie, for actually managing to create this as a sort of holistic program going forward. So well done, everybody on the call too. Um, my background is in government digital transformation primarily, and equally around economic development and academia and smart cities. And it was the sort of smart cities piece that got me involved in islands because it's been a very challenging market arena for a while. And what they're looking for is they're looking for examples of where you can actually use digital transformation and see it in the round in a sort of gestalt manner. And I was invited out to Tortola in the Virgin Islands by the Foreign Commonwealth Office from the UK in 2016. And I remember wandering around it going, looking, I mean, Richard Branson was actually chairing the conference, and he was actually talking about the fact that they were importing 75 million in diesel a month. And I was looking at the island and thinking it's got three roads. It's got three roads that go around a hill. And they've got something like 300 plus days of sunshine a year. So why have you got digital trucks? You know, it just seemed like islands were perfect for what we've been talking about in terms of smart city type activity. So that's what got me interested in islands as almost like large scale innovators and demonstrators of what is the art of the possible for digital transformation. And it's still there. It's still, the opportunity is there to be grabbed. So I've only got about 5 slides and there's only 12 minutes. So and I promised to try and keep to that. One of the reasons, and I didn't actually put in anything about, in case anyone was wondering why I'm not talking about artificial intelligence and Gen AI and machine learning. I started to put it in there and realized that was just too much for 12 minutes. So it's kind of high level. So we can move to the next slide, please. So the opportunity is, as I was saying, islands actually are sort of self-sufficient. They're used to being creative to survive. And they have a bigger sense of community than most other land masses in the world. You know, people say, yeah, no, but I hate so-and-so, etc. And I get that, you know, but it is actually a community that can work together to survive. So islands as innovators and islands as demonstrators. I've sometimes used this with island communities. They don't like the concept that they're a demonstrator, but this is how you actually get attention from the large R&D budgets that comes through some of the major vendors. You know, you've got to actually show them what is the enlightened self-interest in putting stuff into your island. And it's actually because this is where they can show what their kit can do and how it can work. But equally, islands are a critical mass in themselves. I mean, there's something like 20 million, 2,400 inhabited islands across the EU member states. They're important. You know, we start coming up to the French election, the French islands actually are seen to be important. So you can leverage that influence you can have on things like the next generation EU spending that's coming through. And, you know, it's a huge amount of money that's going into digital transformation. 37% of that money must be spent on climate related activity. And 20% of that budget must be spent on digital transformation. So you've got half of that money that's actually mandated to be spent on the types of things that we want to be seeing in islands. So massive opportunity, that's all I'm saying. You know, this is something to go after right now. Next slide, please. But one of the interesting things, I mean, islands are a little bit like smart cities. You know, smart cities is this kind of bucket term, and smart islands is another bucket term because it's defining what is an island. It can be anything from very, very small islands to large islands. I mean, I live in London and, you know, Britain is an island and getting more so day by day post-Brexit, unfortunately. But it's an island. So defining what islands is, but one of the things we can look at is they frequently have common challenges. So economic diversification and competitiveness. You don't want to have fish or tourism as the only thing that you can do in your island, because if we're going down the right hand side of that slide, retraining sorry, retaining and attracting islanders is absolutely critical. You want to keep the best of your people on your island to because what you don't want them to do is disappearing off to the US or anywhere in Europe or anything else. But you've got actually to do that, you've got to give them the opportunities to have the lifestyle that they're actually looking for on the island itself. Connectivity, absolute bedrock of all activity. Sometimes when I'm talking to particular community groups, I start talking about tech, and they say, "Well, it's not about tech; it's actually about people." And they're absolutely right, but it's not a binary question. Unless you've got the tech there, all this sort of clever stuff you want to do on top of the apps that actually sit on top of it actually requires you to actually have the connectivity to start with. Resource management. I'm doing a lot of work currently around water management, and you know, water is pretty important when you're on an island because if you walk too far, you get wet. So it's one of the things I'm beginning to realize is the fact that we've been concentrating on carbon, and carbon's a really hard sell because what you're asking people to do is spend millions of pounds on things that nobody can see. So there's this move towards looking primarily at water as a resource and how it works. And that actually has effects on islands as well. Particularly, if we think about tourists and how much water they actually expend and use, but also about agritech as well. So these are the sort of common things we can potentially agree upon as common challenges that islands are looking at, that we can start to look at where technology can facilitate some sort of amelioration of the challenges involved. That's it. Tech is plumbing. Plumbing's the easiest part of what we do. It's actually trying to get people to change behaviors that's very difficult. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm starting talking, so I'm going all over the place. This is actually incredibly, I think, incredibly critical. By the way, this is a cut down version of a strategy document, which is in the public domain, so you can get hold of it. But these are just 5 slides out of the 25 slides that's in it. But so it explains in that public document. You can have a look at it. And it's how do you do this in the right order? Because a number of times I've come across organizations that they don't actually seem to realize that unless you do it in this order, you're not going to get all the dominoes to fall. And it suddenly stops. So from my experience and from my observations around the world, it starts with that concept of leadership, vision, and user focus. You've got to have that to start with. Once you've got what do people actually want to do? And then the second thing is actually creating the right organization and governance for it to work. The third is, do you have the skills and technological foundations to match the aspirations in your strategy? And then once you've done that, you actually got to create the right partner ecosystem to make it work and get everybody's knees under the table and in agreement about what you're wanting to do. This next one is massively important. How do you measure success? What sort of metrics are you going to use? Because unless you've got the metrics, you cannot create the initial business case, but equally, you can't actually prove you've had a success at the other end of it to get further investment into whatever it is you're doing. And what you end up there with is sort of pilots. Pilotitis is scourge of the world. So we don't want pilotitis. We want to be able to prove we've done something useful, and therefore, can we have some more money to make sure this continues? And funding is the last, because there is plenty of money out there. I mean, genuinely there is. What is missing is good ideas as to how to spend it. If you're working for one of the IFIs, they have large sums of money and they actually have a remit to soft grants, loans, whatever, to actually use that money, but they have to justify it. So therefore you need this plan. You need a plan in place. Next slide, please. And then the sort of technical skills and technological foundations. And the skills are as important as technological foundations. Unless you have an informed customer, you cannot face off with these major tech companies. And equally, you don't know what you're going to be doing with it. There's a quote there from Dolores, which I'm sure you all know her. But I was very impressed with this sort of fireware contextual broker that they're actually putting into the Balearics, because it's an open system. There's no lock-in in there. It's an open system, and what it allows you to do is to start to synthesize the data, and it's all about the data. I was going to run a conference once, and I was going to actually call it "It's the data, stupid," because in fact that's basically how it works. Doesn't matter what the technology is; it only works if you have the right data in place to make it useful. And that would bring me on to, I think, my last slide, actually. I don't know how long I've been talking. This is very fast for me. Right, next slide. Oh, hang on, wait. Can we go back again? Just over the slide. Okay. So the technological foundation. This is the sandwich. This is the island sandwich going on here. You actually have to have ubiquitous, reliable broadband connectivity. That allows you to do stuff. Then you've got to actually have like the IoT platforms that allow you to collect data. But as we know, data is nothing. It's just bits and bytes. It doesn't tell you anything. So you've got to actually have the correct data analytics that sit on the left-hand side. And that's where you start synthesizing data towards outcomes. So health, well-being, micromobility, circular economy, etc. Those are buckets. But unless you get a point solution fitting into these buckets, you've got nothing that actually you can prove what it is you're trying to do. The vision and tools and the institutional capacity, that's part of the skills process. And then the smart islands processes and services. One of the things I've seen on a couple of islands is they've just basically digitized really rubbish processes. That's not how you do digital transformation. You don't look at a process you've got and go, right, we'll just stick this online and it'll work. And then nobody uses it. And because wasn't designed to do what it is you were trying to do. So that's the skills and technology foundations. And this last slide is basically how it all kind of fits together. So can we move to the next slide, please? This is where I see a continuum. Anything you're actually talking about should fit into the continuum. You know, people talk about digital twins, metaverse, AI, and all the other sort of sexy terms. But in fact, unless they fit into a continuum, a data continuum, they don't really work. I mean, I know you can't read the green bits, but you're getting these slides afterwards, so I thought I'd leave them in there anyway. And it's really simplistic. You create the data. So these are things like IoT platforms. But then you got to turn that data into information. And I usually call it like a data exchange of some description, but it means you've actually got data with the right privacy, security, and protocols and everything else that sits in this bucket, and you squish them together so that it actually matches up against a narrative that you're interested in finding out more about. This will give you the insight. And to a large extent, a lot of this are digital twins, which are maturing incredibly well. And they provide things like accessibility of the information. And you can do scenario planning and you can do predictions on the back of this. And then you've actually got to work out, well, once we have this insight, that should allow you to define the areas where you're going to have impact and what you should be, well, not necessarily what you should be doing about it, but at least it focuses you down on. These are the areas we've got to do something about. So data into information, into insight, into impact. Everything you're doing, it should be within that continuum. And technologies like virtual reality, AI, 5G, whatever they are, they should fit into this story. And then I just thought I'd leave one last one because we were doing islands. It's my favorite examples of the art of the possible on this next slide, which is economic diversification and competitive. This is underwater gardens. I don't know how many of you come across them yet, but I think they're one of the most exciting and interesting, I don't know, SMEs, I suppose they are, that are going forward. What I loved was this guy's Marc Garcia Duran, poet, who actually came up with that quote that's on the left-hand side. And that really touched me because what he was saying is, offers to turn tourism and marine technology into a social, cultural, and natural force for good. And this is the bit that I loved was, just as the gardens of the Renaissance evolved from places of entertainment to being the crucible for new scientific discoveries, underwater gardens will encourage curiosity with science by a virtuous circle of edutainment, economy, and ecology. So they're doing this already. I know he's been hawking this around. And by the way, I don't have any commercial relationship with this chap, but he's getting, people are beginning to understand how this could potentially work. And if you're an island, this is the sort of thing you should be looking at. They've got I think they've got 10 million horizon, and this is what is part of what's actually helping to build the place in the Canaries. But just look it up; you'll see it online. It's I just loved this concept of turning entertainment into science forward.
Beautiful.
And with that, I'm going to stop because I know we've got a panel thing. As I said, I've scribbled down stuff about AI if anybody wants to know anything about it. And please do link in with me because I do post on this stuff quite frequently.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was really, really interesting. And I especially think that pilotitis is a very dangerous disease that we all want to avoid. So to make sure we don't hit up the next pilotitis pandemic, we have to make sure that we tailor our skills and technologies to design the outcomes that we actually want as islands in the digital transformation. So thank you so much, Joe. And that was a perfect lead in to our next speaker, Dr. Claire Nelson, who will talk about how islands can design their own future and take control of a smart digital transformation. And Claire, I would like to thank you for getting up so early this morning to be with us here today, because she is 6 hours behind my time zone here in Central Europe. So thank you, Claire, and very cool background. You look awesome. I would like to introduce Dr. Claire Nelson as a global futurist and sustainability engineer. She was named on Forbes as one of the top 50 female futurists in the world. She's the author of the game-changing book, Smart Futures for a Flourishing World, a paradigm for advancing global sustainability. Claire is a board member of the World Futures Studies Federation and editor-at-large of its flagship publication, Human Futures. Most recently, she curated the SIDS Future Festival online to launch the SIDS Futures Forum on the margins of the UN Conference on SIDS in Antigua. She is also a Space for All advocate and working to establish a Space for SIDS Alliance of civil society advocates and academics. Claire is the founder of the Institute of Caribbean Studies and architect of the movement for June as National Caribbean Heritage Month. She holds a doctorate in engineering management from George Washington University and is honored as a White House Champion of Change. Welcome, Claire, and we're excited to hear from you. Take it away.
Thank you so much. I would have to say, I'm glad to be here. I love to meet island people. And if I was in the Caribbean physically, I'd be giving you a warm island welcome. But luckily, it's somewhere where you are, so it's warm for all of us everywhere. So thank you so much to our previous speaker for getting us started. And could you get my slides going, please? Thank you. So I am new to Google Meets, and so I cannot present my slide myself. So Elena's going to help me out. I can't believe it that as an engineer, I'm still so backward. But you know how it is. You can't know everything that there is to know. I'm going to be talking about enabling flourishing futures for smart islands. And I'm not seeing my slides, but hopefully I'll see them soon. I'm going to be talking about enabling flourishing futures for smart islands. And it really comes from a perspective of why the idea that we are being smart about everything except who we are as a species of designers. We have been smart about, we want to have smart watches, smart cars. I'm not sure what's happening with my slides, if she has a problem.
Elena.
There we are.
Okay, I see a white sheet and a background. So we're having some technical issues with the slides.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Elena.
Hopefully it is going to work. Technology doesn't always work, and this is why I tell people, don't get too excited about cash, that's crypto. We can plug it out. So we don't want to plug it out. So we're talking about flourishing futures for smart islands, and I'm hoping it will move automatically the way it's supposed to move, and then poor Elena won't have to be pressing. If we could go to the next slide, because it seems to not be going anywhere. All right. No, it is moving. Thank you. All right. So I want you to jump with me into 2050. And this is a pull year for all of us. And imagine, if you will, these cruise ships that are now homes to senior citizens. And the SS Serenity is docked in Anasa Bay, which is a part of Jamaica, 20th such community around the world. And this idea of cruise ships being repurposed to become places in which people live is a very powerful idea, especially since we think about many of those islands which will be losing their coastline. Even land-based countries will be losing their coastline, and some island chains will have some of their islands totally decimated. And so we have to think about what the future might look like and how do we really want to get to this idea of a flourishing future and smart island. So we're here, if you will, to continue a conversation which I think began with the notion of a smart island. I think the first time I heard people talking about the smart island was about maybe 10 years ago. And since then, we have been on and off talking about it. And certainly in the Caribbean region, it's not something we talk about too often. And that's what I want to kind of push. I have this big dream of turning one of the smaller twin islands into a demonstration state. That's like the previous speaker said. We can demonstrate how we might innovate to make the future we want. So a flourishing future, what does flourishing mean really? And is there a shared future that we can agree that is something we want to get to? I like to always begin my way of thinking through my problems by recognizing that we live in a shared future. And part of what we have to do is decide as a human species that how we are going to share this future by deciding how we share a planet, how we share our humanity, how we share the rule books by which we live, and how we share decision making. And many small island development states are very much unable to make a lot of decisions because they indeed do not have the power over their own decisions. And so we know that the future has changed a lot since COVID. We had one vision of the future pre-COVID, but now it's very different. We understand we're living in a digital economy and we can't go back. We understand that work will be different, and we see many people being digital nomads, traveling to island nations and hanging out, working from the beach. And many things have changed, and attitudes about efficiency versus resilience, the future of capitalism, is it dead? Can we have degrowth? I call that regenerative growth. Many questions are emerging as to how we might create this flourishing future that works for more people. And big questions such as what will happen in social policies. When I hear the word universal basic income and people will stay home and be in leisure while robots work, I'm saying to myself, which people? Because indeed, I believe that humans indeed have to work. It's part of our condition. We must have a purpose in life. Leisure would make us probably go mad, some of us, if we had leisure all the time. But the questions are real. Will there be food for all? Will we have water as a tradable commodity? In islands where they're already challenged by water, how are we going to manage with this water issue? Will water really become a fuel for a new global war? A lot of things are going to be coming at us. And for small islands, for all of us, especially for small island developing states, the biggest challenge is to plan for this increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous future, the VUCA world. We have more choices, yes, but because we have so many choices, we need more regulations. And so when you think about islands, some of whom are still almost in the industry 3.0, recognizing that we're living in an industry 4.0 world, this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world, we really have to get the leadership, the decision makers of these islands up to a rapid start. So think of the island people who are sprinters, Jamaica sprinters. They have to be fast out of the box. And so we have to do a lot more work to get more for decision makers thinking about how we, first of all, situate ourselves in the fourth industrial revolution, which has already paved the way for the transformations that many people already experienced, and recognize we're actually moving into industry 5.0 because AI and robotics are here to stay. They're not going back. And so the evolution of the society itself, society 5.0, and therefore organization 5.0, and therefore workforce 5.0 will be things which we have to take into account as we think about this idea of a flourishing future. So society 5.0, we know what the world is saying at the planetary level. We're talking about ecosystem restoration. We're midway through that decade. We're midway through the decade of ocean science. And I think those are two perfect ideas for islands in general and small island developing states in particular. We are experiencing for the first time this year a UN Summit of the Future. And that in itself for me is just a major milestone. Hence why I decided to do the States Futures Festival in the middle or on the margins of the UN Conference on Small Island Developing States. Because I feel that we really as a species have to get to answer this question, what is the future we want and can we get it if we really, really want it, as Jimmy Cliff would say. You can get it if you really want it. All right, but we must try. And so the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to do a much better job at trying to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think we have done much better than we did with the Millennium Goals, but still I think we're nowhere where we need to be if we're talking about achieving the future we want. And for me, I like to use the word resilient prosperity in as much as I assume that resilient is going to include the context of inclusive prosperity. And so notice my wrong spelling, but anyway, it's another question, but inclusive prosperity. Because for too long, we have focused on growth and smart growth without recognizing that if we don't have what we call regenerative growth, we're not going to make it. And so how do SIDS get to this idea of economic resilience? And for me, resilient prosperity, flourishing futures. Access to finance is fine. Technology is fine. Productive populations, etc., etc. But digitalization, all governments have said, is something that they have to put fair and square on the table. We cannot stay behind. And digitalization requires a whole new way of thinking and being with the world for island nations which have been for too long comfortable with not having data, comfortable with on purpose not having data, and on purpose not using the data, because having that would change the way things are. And sometimes, even though we say we want to change, we're very resistant to change. However, given we know that the future is changing, we have to get to the leadership. And leadership for me doesn't only mean political leadership. It means also the technical leadership, technocrats. It means also the academic leadership. It means also those who are in NGOs who are used to doing things a certain way and assume that things will continue to be the same way. How then do we get to this resilient of ideas of resilient prosperity? If we're talking about economic stability and diversity, last speaker mentioned that, we have to figure out what else can we do besides tourism. And certainly, what else can we do besides the kind of tourism we currently do? In Jamaica, I find I'm up in arms because there's so much push for large-scale tourism and very little push for heritage tourism and community tourism. And I think that is the most unsafe and unwise thing to do. If that crashes, we won't have anybody working because we have put all our money and resources into creating large-scale tourism. We have to talk about social equity and inclusion. We have got to do something very different if we have to move the metrics from the gap between the haves and the have-nots. We have to ensure that as we talk about resilient infrastructure and climate hardening, that we are not just doing it by inviting consultants from overseas, but we're changing our education processes to allow our community schools, our technical schools, our high schools to think about and to teach kids, teach our young people how to engineer the change we want to see. I'm an engineer, so I'm really passionate about it. And so having manifold strategies are critical. Manifold strategies mean having many different ways of working at something. Even though we're small islands, we're very complex. We have the same level of complexity, in some ways more, because we're so small that we are totally interdependent, right? And so the strategies have to be designed for diversity and redundancy, backup plan after backup plan after backup plan. So when we have the invariable hurricane, we don't take, or the invariable volcanic eruption, whatever it is we have, we don't take 5 weeks to come back on stream because we have not planned. One of my biggest fears I have to tell you is that I'm worried because I'm not sure that Jamaica has a earthquake plan that takes into account if the hospital was hit. And I'm very worried. I said, I know we do earthquake resilience training, but have we done any in which the major hospitals are hit? So manifold strategies. So we're talking about in climate change, it's renewable energy. And going beyond the usual solar, why is it small island states are not getting more engaged in tidal and microgrids and wind, offshore wind? We're not seeing it happening at the pace I think it ought to be happening. Because while we're focused on big scale systems, we've got to look at smaller scale systems. But part of the challenge is that most of the times, the consultants that are coming to us, the engineering committees that are winning the bids, are those that are with big islands. So they're designing for big countries and they're not designing for small islands. Hence the importance of a conversation like this, where islands across the world are coming together to share learning, so I can learn, oh, Azores is doing this, oh, Comoros is doing this. The fact is the future is going to be very different, and we have to be prepared to meet the future as best we can by having the foresight and for designing with foresight. And I'm happy to say that finally the powers that be in these agencies have decreed that government should use foresight. Because when I started talking about this, when I worked at the Inter-American Development Bank so many years ago, I was rudely told to go back to my desk and work at my grade level. I was not paid to think about strategy. And this kind of attitude is exactly why many islands are not moving the way they need to move, because they assume that all good ideas must come from the top and only the chief has good ideas. But if we're talking about taking account of opportunities that are in fisheries or agriculture or renewable energy or whatever, we have to move very fast to adopt more of these new ideas. Is my time up?
Yeah, I really want us to be able to have a panel discussion, and I know that we're in a time crunch at the end. So yeah, if you could slowly, quickly wrap up so that we have time for the last speaker, and then we can engage more into this during the panel.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Okay, so we're talking about resilient, prosperity, and smart islands. And the key thing I want to say is that for me, doing this requires a new way of thinking, a new paradigm. I call the smart futures of design, the design framework. And it's about always thinking about S as, and you can stop, you can leave the slides running, but I'm not talking to the slides. S is about dealing with things from looking at everything as a sustainable system, all our systems. M is about metrics that matter. We've got to move away from GDP and GNP for islands as metrics that are the most important. We've got to move to well-being futures and other indexes that actually measure what's important for us. For A in smart, as a smart island, A is taking into account all the agents in the system, the living and non-living, human and non-human, because when we don't do that, we don't design to optimum efficiency. R is, of course, designing for resilience. And finally, T is using technology in a transformational way. And so it means looking at the second and third order impact of technologies. So I think I'll stop right there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was really, really an interesting look into the year 2050 and looking into all the questions that we actually need to ask as islands in order to enable the smart futures that we want as a species and as islanders, as a community. And also, I like that you highlighted the importance of getting decision makers to really also think about this and teaching young people how to design the future that they really, really want. So thank you so much. And I'm really excited to discuss further with Joe and with Claire during the panel discussion. And of course, with our final keynote speaker of today, Marietta Smuts. Marietta is a seasoned executive specializing in strategy, policy, and regulation and digital transformation across diverse industries, including urban planning and the built environment, modern methods of construction, decentralized and renewable energy transport, healthcare, and most recently, heat networks. Currently serving as head of strategy at Digital Jersey, Marietta leads the development and implementation of technology-driven initiatives to address complex challenges in Jersey, the Channel Islands. With over 15 years' experience in senior advisory roles, Marietta has successfully driven impactful projects in both public and private sectors in New Zealand and the UK. Welcome and take it away.
Hi, thanks, Bonnie, and thank you very much for having me on today in the webinar. I might just quickly sprint through these so that we can have that conversation. And I understand from Bonnie and the team that these slides will be made available afterwards. So hopefully we can see that. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Will Alina be sharing your slides? Yeah. Or will you will do it yourself?
I'm
Yeah.
just
Okay,
doing it.
great. Perfect.
Okay, thanks. So I'll be talking a lot about Jersey and our experiences so far, but a lot of it is trying to sort of accelerate outcomes, through digital adoption. So a little bit about Jersey first. We're 14 kilometers off the coast of France. We're 45 square miles in terms of size. We're pretty small, 103,000 people, but we have an independent government which makes its own rules and own laws, even though we're associated pretty closely with the UK as a crown dependency. We're an international financial center. So what does that mean? We have particular tax laws and a tax regime and a financial center that financial services sector, which is very mature. And on top of that, we have, insofar as digital infrastructure, we have 100% fiber to premises. And from the last count, I think we were one of the fastest sort of connected in the world with a gig up and gig down available.
Sorry, Marietta, I just want to confirm that you don't have slides up at the moment, right? Or should you have them up? We don't see them.
You don't see them?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it sounds great without them, actually, but
let me try again. Actually, it's come up with an error saying, sorry, an error has occurred for screen sharing. So I'll just try again. Sorry, folks. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, no worries.
Bonnie?
But I was thinking maybe you didn't have any because it sounded great without them as well. So.
Okay. So let's try this again. Sorry, folks.
While you're getting those ready, I just want to remind the participants to pop any questions that you have in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen under the activities section, this little triangle, circle, square thing. Thank you.
Oh, so can you see?
Now we see them. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. So, yeah, we have one of the fastest sort of connections in the world. As Digital Jersey is an economic development agency, so we're an arm's length organization, which means we sit outside of government, yet we are delivering on government priorities. And initially we were set up just nearly 10 years ago in a response to the GFC, because as I was saying before, Jersey is quite heavily focused on the financial services sector, which makes up about 45 to 50% of our economy. And that's quite a huge amount of eggs in one basket, so to speak. So when the GFC came along, it really did help sort of stimulate, actually, we need to do a lot more for other sectors. And the best way to do that is through adopting technology and digitization. We're a small team. We only have about 17 of us, but we have a very broad spectrum of activities. And I know I'm going to show you the next slide, which is very busy indeed. But in essence, it's our plan on a page and covers so many different areas, from thriving industry clusters, accessing funding and growth tools, to helping bring about an innovation island, or a smart island, if you like. Core major programs for us include setting up what we think is probably the first data stewardship or data trust in the world. Jersey has quite mature and sophisticated trust laws, and we've built a reputation around our trust laws, hence our financial services focus. But a key question came up just a couple of years ago about whether or not we could treat data in the same way. And a data trust enables us to protect data in a specific way, but also make sure that it could be shared for specific purposes. And that frees up a lot of decision making around how we treat data. And this is going to be quite an important thing going forward. We've just finished our first pilot of this, and this was collecting a whole lot of cycle data. And I can provide a whole lot more information for people if they're really interested in this. The second major program for us is the consideration of the Jersey Data Exchange. So what does that mean? We have a digital twin, we have access to data, but sitting on top of it would be a data trust, which is a legal structure, and a data exchange mechanism. So again, we're trying to sort of look at how we can look at data in a particular way. Underscoring all of this is our work to try and improve skills across the island. And as you know, skills is a lifelong learning activity. And as we look at how people shift and change from one job to another, the importance of having the ability to operate in a digital mindset is really, really important. And our last of our major programs, which I'll probably focus on a lot more, is Impact Jersey. Impact Jersey is a ring-fenced £20 million fund, which is designed to accelerate the adoption of technology and tackle the island's very complex challenges. And that's across social, economic, and environmental challenges. One of the things that was really important was one of our telecoms here was able to sell off one of their business units. And then what that created was a huge dividend back to government. Using that sort of innovation and that innovative mindset, it was almost an opportunity to say, actually, what can we do with this innovation? We'll ring fence it. And that is a really important, and I think quite a bold decision to be made by politicians, quite sort of long-term thinking as well. So it took us about 6 months to design the scheme. We couldn't do it internally. What we had to do is really look at who have been developing these sorts of innovative sort of design mechanisms around the world. And we worked with Nesta Challenge Works, part of the UK, and they've helped to set up Impact Canada. A lot of stakeholder engagement, and this is really important to make sure that we had the civil engagement and making in terms of getting a whole lot of buy-in. But we created Impact Jersey through a sign-off process within government, and at its core, and I'll come back to this quite a bit, we have a real core principle for this as a learn, adapt, and share type opportunity. So if we have this £20 million, what does it actually mean? We would like to stand up projects, technology projects, test, trial, adopt, and see how we can work within particular industries. We've got so many island priorities, and no doubt many people on the call will probably look at these and think, actually, we've got very similar issues and similar priorities to solve. So how do we improve productivity in existing economic sectors? How can we support the development of new economic sectors, improve health and well-being for islanders, create sustainable transport options? And that's quite a specific focus around mobility, supporting skills development, as I've spoken to before, but also responding to the climate emergency, improving supply chain resilience, especially for an island 14 kilometers off the coast, and we are heavily reliant on our supply chain. If one ferry isn't able to land, due to weather issues, that means that we have this just-in-time supply chain, and we've got empty shelves across the supermarkets. And our last area to look at, or domain, is addressing housing and infrastructure needs. How does it work? So often we'll be looking at something quite specific in terms of its complexity, the ambiguous nature. We could be looking at how do we improve our understanding of our water system, all the way through to air quality. And so we need to make sure we can prioritize. Each program is designed to solve a specific strategic objective. And so these programs, proposals are co-designed, often with the government department, but often with a whole lot of key stakeholders involved. Now, there are 3 types of funding methods. Direct procurement, which you're already sort of familiar with. Now, we would tend to use a direct procurement if we are thinking, actually, our island just needs to play catch up, because we're a small island and often we miss out on innovations, and there could be a solution that could just, be bought directly off the shelf. We haven't utilized that one just yet. An open grant environment is a really interesting one as well, because what we want to do is try and see how small, medium enterprise or entrepreneurs could come and help sort of solve our big issues. So again, this is trying to help incentivize the private sector to become involved and marshal their resources, their skill set, and their talent. And that's going to be really important for us. So an open grant is an opportunity to help sort of stimulate a number of things. And then last, of course, is a challenge prize scenario. And a challenge prize, you may already be familiar with, is fantastic, because what you'd put out is a challenge statement, and then you ask, entrepreneurs and businesses and invite them to sort of come and solve, this particular challenge, and have a prize or winnings, at the end of it. And it could be stage gated, throughout. So you could start off with 10, they go through to the next stage, 5, and then the next stage is 3, and then there's one ultimate winner. And that has been used in many different areas across the world. So one of the main things for every program that we have is this core learn, adapt, and share, which I'll talk about shortly. So our first opportunity was to launch our first open program, and this was a SMART grant program, and we designed this to try and test the strength and quality of on-island entrepreneurs, and to also test our own internal processes. We put aside 500,000 to support projects, and we would say actually up to £75,000 you can submit your project as long as it aligned with those 8 priorities or domain areas which I mentioned before. So a quick round of the numbers: 222 registered interest. We had 70 applicants, 12 came in for shortlisting and interview, 7 were proposed to our deciding group, and we ended up having 6 winners. And just bear in mind, if we step back, Impact Jersey was designed to try and help accelerate the adoption of technology and showcase, how technology can really shift the dial for a range of sort of areas. So here's on the left-hand side, you have some of our winners. Now, Andium Homes is the island's social housing provider, and they wanted to test, by installing sensors within their homes, how can they provide information to their tenants so that their tenants can live well and healthy. So that's understanding moisture levels, that's understanding carbon dioxide. We've got a lot of houses that are built with granite, and so there's radon levels that need to be mindful of, but also providing early warning detection for floods for some areas. They wanted to understand how their whole portfolio will perform, and so by supporting them, they were able to help deliver better outcomes for their tenants. An air rescue drone team. Now they've already had a number of missions already out finding people, and so we were able to fund the purchase of some drones, and they've been great actually by providing our emergency services with 24/7 volunteer team, all the way through to streamlining risk and assurance. So it's a more sort of proof of concept, all the way through to air pollution monitoring, which has been really fantastic for us to understand how our island is performing. Without Impact Jersey, none of these projects would have been funded, but we're taking a real sort of quasi-experimental approach to this. If we have these projects up and running, how do they work? What were the intended consequences and what were the unintended consequences? So a lot of our projects were assessed around technology readiness levels, and this was an objective standard developed by NASA in order to understand how things go from just a concept or an idea all the way through to being something that's mission ready to be deployed in space. And a lot of that type of standard and understanding has been put into understanding technology readiness levels for a whole lot of other areas. So for our open program winners, we had a range, which is great. So as a program, we then get the opportunity to understand if someone's entered our program at a particular TRL level and then they've exited at another TRL level. That's been really, really interesting. What was it that helped accelerate them along? I've talked about impact evaluation briefly before, but we have a theory-based approach. Each of our programs will be assessed through mixed method approach, but often when we're unlocking a program, we'll have a theory of change, but what we're able to do with an independent assessment is to make sure that we go from theory into actual results, and then we can detail results chain, and then we'll be able to share the evaluation of a program as it comes to hand. And that's going to be really important for us as we go through. I'm just mindful of time, so I might sort of skip through some of these things, and of course you can read this in detail when the slides are shared. So because evaluation itself is a new approach for Jersey, we want to consider all of these projects to be demonstrator projects. We need to showcase the art of the possibility. And often this is our way that we can ensure we have transparency, we make sure that people can buy into it. But ultimately, we'd love to be able to sort of collect enough information and evidence, and this is Jersey contextualized data, to help drive policy change in the right way. And as you all know, policy development can take a long time and often can be pulled in different directions because of a political agenda. But if we have Jersey contextualized data of how something works or how something doesn't work, then that's a really stronger proposition that can be put forward. One of the things we want to do, ultimately achieve with Impact Jersey, is to not only test and trial, understand risk, but we actually have to shift culture and ensure that we've got the opportunity to reframe what failure means. Fast failure is good. Let's learn from it and let's share it. You know, it's an absolute dynamic ecosystem, and we want to shift everyone from being like just an active recipient to being an active participant. And I think that's going to help shift our culture along. So I might just walk you through very, very quickly our latest program, which is going through, and this is focused quite clearly on helping our care sector evolve, flourish, and actually adopt technology to deliver better outcomes. And this is the better outcome for us is helping our aged folk to live more independently. So our why, and this probably isn't unique at all for us at all.
Very quickly, please, Marietta, so that we can have time for the panel.
Okay, absolutely. So we've got an aging population. It's really unaffordable. We can't afford it to fund it for long. And our health system is inflexible. It can't work. So those are our three big areas. We've got a massive ticking time bomb, but this is the opportunity to change. And we really want to have projects which are developed overseas, brought to Jersey, and implemented well. We want to accelerate the transition of healthcare from being very reactive to being quite proactive. But also, we want to help people live more independently, as I was saying before. So we've created an open grant program of up to £2 million. We're going to encourage tech providers from off island and on island to really team up with our care providers. This is around making sure that we've got projects that can resolve, the specificity of each of the care providers' need. And so by teaming up, this is a great opportunity to spin up some projects. We've got a project window delivery between 12 and 36 months. And of course, we'll evaluate as we deploy. Here's some key uses: Internet of Things within a smart home, wearables, there's mobility aspects, telehealth care. We're trying to implement a lot of it. And again, I talked about TRLs before. So this one is quite mature type technology between zones 7 and 9.
Great.
Huge
I'm going to have to
benefit.
cut you there, Marietta.
I'll stop there.
Great, but we have some questions as well. So not in the chat so far. I'm thinking that there might be an issue with the Q&A section. I just saw a pop-up saying that a host has to approve the questions. I think they might be in a backlog, Elena. But I definitely have some questions for all of you. So first of all, thank you so much, Marietta. It was really interesting to hear of a practical island and what you're doing on Jersey, especially how comprehensive it is, looking from healthcare to businesses. And Jersey was actually one of the islands that sparked our initial interest years ago in this topic of digitalization and really ignited the flame for the project. So I'm really, really happy that you're here and looking forward to an awesome short panel discussion now. Elena, if I could ask you to, first of all, I also want to thank Elena, who's helping us with all the IT here. So without her, this would also be much more difficult. If I could ask you to bring up Claire and Joe back up on the screen. And Claire, I hope you can stick around for a few minutes because I know you're also in a rush to, that you have another appointment that you have to be at. But if you have a couple more minutes, we'd really, really appreciate it. And Joe, if you could also just switch on your camera and microphone, or if Elena will do that. There you go. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all. I'm really so excited about all of your talks, and I think you all touched on a certain point that I would like to ask a question about. So Joe, Claire, and Marietta all emphasized the importance of skills and putting people in the center stage of the digital transformation on islands. And that means retaining talents, improving education, focusing on well-being, on the environment, conservation, and really how we see the future, not letting digital transition take over. So in a practical sense, what can islands do to ensure that people have access to the right digital skills? And who and what kind of actors should do what and play which role in that transition?
I'm going to take a stab at it, because I think for too long the small island developing states we've been focused on the low end. And so we are talking a lot about, we're bringing jobs in for call centers, for example, right? Call centers. And yes, it's employing a lot of people, but you're employing people who are coming out of a university, for example, and then they're going to be answering phones. So I think we need to have different approaches for different levels. This technology is going to be so complex that we certainly need to have a couple of people who understand where it's going. We need to be able to borrow from. In the case of small island states, we may not have the world's biggest, and latest natural language processing person at the university on the island, but you certainly have them in the diaspora or in another island. And you need to create these structures that allow the sort of a knowledge base to be accessible to your decision making, because you have to understand the fundamental direction in which the technology is going. And then you have to have the engineers, you have to have leaders who understand the technology. And many of the policymakers are not from an engineering background, they're from legal backgrounds, they're afraid of anything to do with technology and mathematics. And so we have a gap. So I think we really have to have manifold strategies to have different types of knowledge and learnings and understandings be available across the whole sector of people who will be affected by the choice.
Okay, I'd like to jump in here as well here, because I think Marietta actually, I used to describe Jersey as the Goldilocks Island. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small. It had different sort of, like financial services plus tourism plus agri-tech, etc. It's a perfect island for doing this type of activity. Well, I was thinking one of the things they're talking about is the fact of being able to use their tax laws, being able to actually use what they have. So I can't remember if it's Turks and Caicos or Antigua. They came up with a scheme looking at what was actually happening in the Baltic states, particularly around the idea of, they were looking at trying to attract sort of major technology companies to their island to create R&D facilities. And one of the things they came up with was they would actually they would tax the IP at their rates for 50 years. Now, if you're an Amazon or a Google or someone else actually getting your IP taxed at local rates as opposed to US developed countries or wherever, that's a marvelous way of actually using what they have as a unique facility to create inward investment of the type of economies that they're looking for. And of course, the actual quid pro quo was you would have to make sure that X amount of the jobs that you were creating were for local people. So you were going to train them up and give them proper high value jobs that actually could be operated remotely. So it's this type of thinking that's, of diversification, of actually saying, what have we got? What can we use to actually attract the inward investment that we're wanting to create the sort of jobs that we need on these islands to keep the best people here? I thought it was a great idea. It was like, it came out of the Estonian, the Estonian e-residency certificate. So it's a similar concept. It's how can we actually use our ability to create this type of approach to attract the inward investment we need to create the skills that we need and the jobs that we need to keep people on the islands.
No, that's right. I mean, a part of this is around, there are multiple levers to pull on. And I think the innovation and I think the cleverness is, what levers to pull, and there's multiple levers to pull on, because, skills and a skilled workforce is so huge. From ensuring that there's no sort of digital disparity all the way through to trying to reskill and upskill, the current workforce. So I think, yeah, you're right, Joe. I mean, it's how do you get inward investment, but there's also a whole lot of other sort of levers to pull on.
Yeah, thank you all so much. That's really insightful. And I think, as you mentioned, there's just so many different aspects of this, and getting people those high valued skilled jobs and pulling on the right levers. It's very, very important. I will ask one more question before we jump into the panel part of this. And maybe I will go to you again, Claire, and then to Joe and to Marietta. So linking to the ecosystems aspect, how can government, businesses, and academia interact to unlock the potential of digitalization for islands?
Okay, so I think we have to think about things in again, new ways of being. I like to always begin with the story. I think if we can get them to begin with the future they want and have a conversation about the future they want, then we're more likely to get them to work together. Right now, we don't have a shared vision. I don't think there's a strongly shared vision. And I use the case study of Jamaica, for example, who has a 2030 vision statement that predates the SDGs. And when I would ask a private sector company, or when I would ask the average taxi driver or university person, how do they see themselves in it? They say, oh, that's a government thing. And so the decision makers and policymakers have to do a much better job at taking participatory processes from just merely the perfunctory. We're going to have a consultation where they talk at people, to have a different kind of a consultation where you're talking with people to co-create something. And I think by really looking at storytelling and story making, I love futures thinking. I'm a futurist. I love storytelling. I think if we're able to have more shared stories about what success looks like and how that success benefits each of this tripartite parts of the ecosystem, even if people are doing different things, we're more likely to achieve that success.
I see. One of the great barriers, particularly when you're dealing with government, is the fact that who pays and who benefits. Okay, that's always a problem. So you've actually got to create an atmosphere of enlightened self-interest. I love this phrase because it makes people do things that they wouldn't necessarily normally do. Once they actually appreciate what benefit it is to them to do something, then they might throw their money in the pot, or they might actually come up with legislation or whatever to make it work. When we actually were doing it with the UK government, the original sort of e-government thing was we would get everybody in. Shows how old I am. This was under Tony Blair. We get everybody in and the major government departments, and then we form this e-government group, etc. And of course, they came in, and the HMRC was still fighting for the HMRC. The DVLA was still fighting for the DVLA. The Treasury was still fighting for the Treasury. So we came up with this cunning plan. The cunning plan was, we said, okay, you are no longer the e-government person for the Treasury. You are now the e-government person for over 60s. You give them a horizontal view, and then they come out of their departmental mindset because they now have a horizontal thing they need to deal with. And that starts that process of where they start looking in the Gestalt manner at how it works. It's purely psychology, but it works, and it's kind of practical. And then I like practical ways of actually making people do things they wouldn't actually normally do. That's one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think, what we've tried to design with Impact Jersey is looking at identifying an issue and really getting into, what are the different dynamics around that issue or that problem, and then also the opportunities. And what you start seeing is you start pulling people out of their departmental, I like your departmental zone where they're very comfortable, and you're actually forcing them to take a really integrated view across it. And then you patch on top of that the commercials, because you've got a technical solution which resides somewhere else. And now you're incentivizing, you're bringing them to the island, and you got, within the care sector, and this is no doubt, in other jurisdictions as well, we've got charities who are operating, who are actually busy doing the doing, and they don't have the opportunity to have, a skill set that can deploy complex technical problems, technical projects, or technology projects, or digitization at all. And so what we're trying to do is try and mash these guys together, create these teams, and then provide the funding, and then layer on top of that almost like an academic approach to understanding whether or not this project is contributing to longer term outcomes. What are the things that can be done again, repeated, and what are the things that can be avoided? How can we make this more optimized? And once we're able to share these reports and get out there, that then lifts the industry, and then that actually provides, I think, coming back to what Claire was saying, that's some storytelling. That's some storytelling about how an outcome was achieved and how actually bringing people together out of their silos, provides that best opportunity to get the right solution in place.
Yeah, can I come back again as well, though? Because actually, one of the things I find massively successful is the fact to turn yourself from a cost center to a revenue center. So when I was heading up the innovation team at Bristol City Council, we brought in about 15 million a year on government grants, commission grants, etc. That allowed me to have a seat at the table. And if you go into that seat at the table and you're not just saying, I would like you to pay for this, you go in there and say, this is a really good idea, and I've got 2 million I can stick in the pot. That actually changes the atmosphere entirely. So start thinking about where you can actually create people who are good at, getting funding. And once you've got that, you've got a seat at the table and you've got a way of influencing where the major expenditure occurs.
Absolutely agree. And I think this is the tough part. Usually we'd all be sort of talking about integrated planning or integrated programs without the necessary funding. And I think that's absolutely right. We've got to be able to sort of find, where those grants are, bring them together, and then start delivering some showcase projects, demonstrate real change.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And to wrap up this section, I will ask just one sentence, if you can stay with us for 1 more minute. If you could answer in one sentence, ideally, what dangers may digitalization have to an island? That's a great question from the chat. Oh, sorry. I think you're muted, Claire.
Yeah, what's the question? What danger?
The question is, what risks or what dangers may a digital transformation bring to an island?
Wow. State capture.
Nice one. Wrapped it up in one word. 2 words. Great. Thank you.
So I'm trying to think of what is bad about digitization. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that obviously, because it's what I do daily. So and I'm coming at it. It's a good thing. But it's actually, what do you do with the data, I suppose, and it's got to be with the right privacy, security protocols that allow you to have control over what people know about what you're doing. And we've seen countries where that is compromised. It's not necessarily a Western European thing, but it can be compromised. So it's scrutiny, I suppose. And as humans, we don't want to be scrutinized. Simple as that.
Roger that. Marietta?
I'm with Joe. I'm fully into the digitalization. It's very positive. So I think flipping it is quite hard. I think what risks does it bring? I think if you have an agenda to digitize, I think there's a risk that you don't bring people with you. And there's fear, and as Joe was saying, there's fear. There's a whole lot of interest, and there's a willingness to just try and protect as much as possible. Digitization has the biggest opportunity to democratize knowledge, democratize how things are done, and sort of create, a new type of, ways of working, ways of living, that we've never seen before. The biggest risks that it brings with it are people who do not want to change and adapt.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I really, really appreciate this informative talk from all 3 of you. And I think all of you highlighted the importance of bringing people along with you, and the importance of keeping people and islands and their goals center stage in this digital transformation. So again, thank you very, very much. And you're welcome to stick around for the second half of our meeting if you like. We will now go on to practical examples from islands around the world who are actually employing digital transformation on their islands.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
So the first speaker we have today, who will present about coming all the way to us from La Réunion in the Indian Ocean. We're so excited to have you here, Denis. We will hear from Denis Fabrigue, Director of Reunion TDH, and he will talk to us about the deployment of fiber optic in cities on La Réunion. Welcome, Denis.
Thank you, Vinny.
Please let us know if I don't see your slides yet, but I think they're on the way.
Well, good morning to everyone.
There
And
they
thank you for inviting me. No, it's not mine. Oh, see. Oh, yes, it's okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me today, and I apologize first for my poor English. I'm honored to be speaking with you about the strategic approach of the Réunion Island to develop its telecommunication infrastructures. I'm Denis Fabreg, CEO of Réunion THD. It means high-speed broadband, a public infrastructure created by Regional Council of La Réunion to create and maintain telecom networks. I'm going to talk about the foundation, as said by Joe, our first speaker. The infrastructure is the foundations. Indeed, to be able to develop uses, efficient network is required. Next slide, please. The first network which is essential for an island is the submarine cable. The island of Réunion faces challenges due to its geographical isolation, but you are probably all concerned. With a distance of 20,000 kilometers from the European continent, the construction and maintenance of submarine cables are very costly. These costs are directly reflected in the price paid by users, with a premium of €20 per month for submarine cable services in Réunion Island. Our goal is to ensure that the island has an infrastructure capable of supporting high-speed and very high-speed internet. But we had to choose between two options. The first one, enforce competition to get the lowest price possible, or require the same price as on the continent. In fact, the fact is that the submarine cable cost must be carried over the users. It can be done only in two ways. The first one, the users pay more. The other, less broadband is affected to each user, which means less quality. So we have made the strategic decision to prioritize competition, which is the only way to minimize the surcharge paid by users while keeping high quality broadband, high quality connections. This approach has led to a durable installation of competition on the territory with positive side effects. An example of the positive effect is the presence in our territory of 6 internet access providers. We had up to 10 in the past, and 4 mobile operators. Another one is the fact that Réunion Island has a better high-speed internet than the whole French average. We are quite proud of this. In addition of the submarine cable project, we have also deployed very high-speed fiber optic networks across the island. We have chosen to cover 100% of homes with fiber optic connection to ensure equity among citizens and to promote digital literacy through excellent service quality. Next slide. The key takeaways from our experience are, first, prioritize competition. This approach has long-term structural effects on the development of a territory. It's probably more important on an island than on the continent. The risk of monopoly position is higher. Second, for resilience, you should have at least 1 submarine cable, ideally 3. This is necessary to ensure the reliability of the networks and the resilience of the island. Third, to get reasonable prices, competition is essential, with at least 3 major actors in the market. And at least the public sector has multiple means of action. even in a competitive sector. The public sector can use various tools to achieve its goals, such as investment, partnership, and litigation. Finally, give a good high-speed internet connection is the first brick to build the house. I hope our experience can serve a valuable reference for the insular territories, and look forward to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denis. I really appreciate that, and it's so interesting to hear about how La Réunion is doing it in practice, all the way in the middle of the ocean, and how you're really focusing on the importance of connectivity, but also the reliability of that connectivity. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Ralph Bierkhoff. Again, Ralph, thank you for joining us so early in the morning and coming to us from the beautiful sunny islands in the Caribbean, I believe Tobago, if I'm not mistaken. And Ralph is the developmental lead of Alchemy Renewables and Geoframe Energy Partners. He is going to speak to us today about what they are doing for geothermal-powered NA nearshore data centers in the Eastern Caribbean. Take it away, Ralph.
Thank you, Bonnie. And yes, a warm welcome from the island of Tobago. We've listened to some speakers talk about the digital transformation, and you know, underneath all of that, we really need to focus on the infrastructure of data storage and energy. Everything starts with energy. In the Caribbean here, we are very fortunate that we sit on a massive amount of geothermal energy in the Eastern Caribbean, particularly in this basin. If you can move to the next slide, please, Alina. Yeah, go ahead. So what we're seeing, in my background, you know, over the several decades, I was very much involved in data center site selection in North America. And we're really seeing a massive transformation towards the identification of power. In my past experiences, data centers were looking at expansion as a real estate issue. Where they could find buildings that could be converted or built within a region that had competitive and very strong energy grids to power their centers. There were latency issues involved, of course, for financial services. But the emphasis really was on expansion of data center storage capabilities based on a real estate decision, and to some extent the HR component. What we're seeing today especially with the advent of AI, is we're seeing a massive demand increase in data storage around the world. And this slide just kind of emphasizes that we currently stand at about 10 zettabytes of storage in 2023 last year, and that's expected to more than double in the next 3 years now. And this is really based on the demand from the AI sector. So we're seeing a lot of major users like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all of the big DC players now looking at site selection based on their power needs, because the power required to sustain data storage systems for AI is much higher than what was normally required for data center power supply. Where we're now seeing that individual data centers are looking for 300 to 500 megawatts of base load power, and it needs to be base load because redundancy power systems are going to be very, very difficult to supply through generation, diesel generation or what have you. So we're now starting to see these major DC users look at power supply around the world. And if you go to the next slide, thanks, Selena. So what we're seeing now is these major DC users are looking at baseload power supply from nuclear and geothermal power to directly generate power for their data centers. Scalable power, certainly in the terms of geothermal, and a massive amount of power supply, a dedicated power supply. So we're now seeing these companies around the world looking, and particularly this is a shot from the US in Utah, I believe, where Google is working with a geothermal development partner and creating a geothermal energy plant strictly for their own power needs. We're seeing this more and more around the world. So what? Go ahead, Elena. Next slide, please. So here in the Eastern Caribbean, we're sitting on a gold mine. We have confirmed resources of somewhere in the area of 6,400 megawatts of power from these islands that you're listed here. The interesting thing is that we're working with utilities as well, of course, to convert their oil and gas generation, electrical generation to geothermal, because it's an abundant resource, and they could literally overnight transform to 100% geothermal power, baseload power, for their utility requirements. But if you add up all of these islands, including Martinique and Guadeloupe, you're less than 500 megawatts of total peak demand for these islands, which is leaving us with a 5,800 megawatt surplus of power. Now, that surplus power could be used in many different ways. We could interconnect other islands that do not have geothermal resources, like we could go from St. Kitts and Nevis or Montserrat to Antigua, for instance, and supply them with all the power through an undersea cable system. And we could literally connect all of the islands in the Caribbean, and they could take power from this surplus. There's obviously the opportunity for green hydrogen production, which could happen domestically in each of these islands. But one of the areas that we're focused on is trying to attract major DC users to this nearshore environment, and offering them this ability to connect to this massive amount of surplus power. In the past, the Caribbean region was not seen as a let's call it a safe place for data centers. Data centers in the past, because of the engineering of them, were really trying to avoid any locations that had seismic activity, volcanic activity, hurricanes, etc. But the infrastructure engineering has now solved that problem. So we're trying to now look at broadening the demand in the Caribbean. So the digital transformation process is going to require more and more storage capability, and that's why we're seeing this proliferation of data centers all over the world. The Caribbean has this opportunity to attract these major users through this surplus power amount, and that's our strategy at the moment in trying to bring some of these major users down to the Caribbean. Next
Thank
slide,
you.
please.
Ralph, I'm going to have to ask you to quickly wrap up.
Okay, so a couple of things that we can do. You're seeing power rates in the US and California at 30 cents a kilowatt hour, in the eastern US at 23 to 25 cents a kilowatt hour, because utilities are trying to conserve their energy. What geothermal power can do is two things. We can drive that price down here in the Eastern Caribbean to about 15 cents a kilowatt hour, and we can offer them a fixed rate term of 25 years with no increases. And that goes to the utilities as well. Also, geothermal has the highest capacity rating, even higher than nuclear or hydroelectric power. So that's, it's a baseload power. Next slide, please. So, yeah.
Possible.
Okay, I'm going to go real quick through these last three slides, Bonnie, because these are absolutely critical. What they need is network interconnectivity. This slide basically just shows that the fiber connectivity within the Caribbean now has advanced to the point where we can solve that issue. Next slide, please. Cooling, obviously, is a critical factor. There are now technologies that provide seawater cooling. We're surrounded by seawater, so cooling is, again, an issue that's can be dealt with. And lastly, next slide, please. We have infrastructure solutions that are rapid deployment, that are hurricane resistant, seismic resistant, and have a total air seal efficiency against volcanic dust, etc. This is a photo of a project we did in West Texas for one of the cryptocurrency miners. And that just shows you kind of what the infrastructure is. Obviously, there are incentives, concessions available from the islands to attract data centers. So this is the program that we're involved with, and we're hoping to see some success in the very near future.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ralph. And yeah, it's so impressive how to see how you're managing to tailor this dedicated power supply to digital transformation in the Caribbean, and also how abundant the resources is if we tap into them and harness them. So thank you so much for that inspiring practical case.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I would like to now call Amalia Cerda from maybe help me a little bit with your name. She is the Corporate Social Responsibility Director at Circulare and Terme, Circular Hotels in Mallorca. So thank you so much, Amelia.
Thanks.
And Elena, if we could go to Amelia's slides.
Well, thanks for the invitation. So I will try to make it short. No, that's not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm well. First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation, and then also I'm here to present a project we have been working intensively. I would say mainly the last 2 years, and it's a joint project between Terme and Circulare, and it's called the FinHava project. So I think, well, it's you can go to the next slide. We are managing the waste management system on Mallorca, on the island of Mallorca, the municipal waste system, which is an integrated system with different treatment plants for different fractions of the waste which is generated by the population of the island, also mainly also very much influenced by the tourists. We have big tourists coming to our islands, and so we have a big seasonality, and it makes well, it's a challenge for us to manage that. And we were thinking in order to promote, to fulfill the objectives, the targets of waste recycling, and to promote this good recycling on the island, what can we do to involve the different stakeholders, the different partners, the society, into the project, that we work all together to improve these numbers. And so if you go to the next slides, we have the infrastructures for that. That's the first point, which is extremely important. But we thought we have to do something else, and so we decided to go to. You go to the next slide for I think a very nice project, which is called well, it's done by Circular, and it's called FinHava. Is the tool we use for that. That was to think about to put together the hotels, which is for us a very important partner, the farmers, the agriculturists on the island also, and ourselves as managers of the waste infrastructures, and to work together to see how we can, first of all, improve our numbers on recycling, and also to create a traceability, and also to show how we can close the loop. And for that, we were working on one of the fractions which has a big impact, which is the organic fractions, the bio-waste, which is separate collected, and that we have to improve the numbers because was one which has maybe more difficulties for us. And so we decided to put together the hotels, which of course they have to separate the waste there and generate this bio-waste. And also they bring this separate fraction to our infrastructures. We generate compost, and with this compost, we deliver that compost to the farmers, and they produce again products that can go to the again to the hotels for the buffet. So in this way, we could show very, very easily, in a very easy way, how the different partners put it together and working together and engage in the project and creating this ecosystem can improve our objectives and can make circularity happen. And for that, we have created a tool, which is this FinHava tool, which helps to all the stakeholders or the partners which cooperates in the project to put their own numbers, the waste, for instance, the producers, the hotels in this case, then we know exactly which amount of organic fraction is collected by each hotel which participates in the project. Then we can also follow what happens with this fraction which comes to our facilities to generate compost out of it. And then with this compost, we also can see what goes on with the tertiary, also with the tertiary sector and with agriculture, the farmers, to see how much produce they produce out of this compost, exactly coming from each hotel. And then the compromise that the hotels take again the products generated by local 0 kilometer and local products from the farmers to bring it again into this buffet. So the platform Create, which is in Hava, it's has, I think, really it's very interesting because can show how this cycle is really, the loop is closed. It gives really this traceability, which is very important, and also allows to follow other indicators we have introduced in this tool. If you go the next slide, maybe it's
Thank you, Amelia.
yes. Here is, of course, this loop. I have already.
Yeah, if you could do a very quick wrap up.
Yes, it's almost done. So then there's the next slide. These are nowadays when we close the year, the number of hotels participating in the project, the farmers, and the agriculture, the distributors, the supply chain, and so on. And then you go to the next slide. These are the numbers, no, I say. So we can follow up exactly which amount of biowaste has been collected, separately collected by the hotels, has been produced compost out of it, has been circular to make circular products, and then has also come back to the hotels. And this is also the renewable energy generated out of it and the CO2 saves which are produced. So I think this is a view which with this digitalization has allowed us to first to show it very easily, and also to get numbers, to give traceability, and to involve all the partnerships. So I think I will say these are big steps which has been go on there to reach our main target. So this is with this FinHava tool.
Thank you, Amelia. That's so incredible to hear, because I know that the struggles of tourism dependent islands, sometimes what they go through, and it's amazing to see how you're able to bring the hotels together using digitalization and also close some of those waste stream loops. So thank you very much. I just want to have a quick reminder to the viewers of this webinar that you can follow our project on LinkedIn. I popped the link in the chat, and as well, if you keep asking questions, if we don't have time, sorry, if you could just mute one more second, Erna. Thank you. Thank you. If we don't have time to get to questions for the specific speakers, but you still have more on your mind, feel free to still ask them in the Q&A, and we could also post them in our LinkedIn channel, and the speakers can also answer them there. I think we will run slightly late for this webinar, but we will get in our speakers, and we might go a little bit over the 2:30 CET mark, but definitely closing up before 3 p.m. So I would like with that to invite our next speaker, Erna van der Werf, who is the co-founder of Learning Hub Friesland, the islands here in the Netherlands, and she will talk to us about the Island Schools project. Welcome, Erna.
Yes, thank you, Bonnie, and thank you for inviting me to talk about our Island Schools project. Well, I do see that the presentations and the keynote speakers that were in this seminar earlier today were very interesting and very much dedicated to the technology, the digitalization as an aim, I would say, and talking about the high-speed internet connection, which is obviously very important. Talking about data and AI. Our project, or our case study, or the case study that I will present to you, is somewhat different, because in our Island Schools project, the main aim was bringing primary, secondary schools on islands across Europe together around sustainability. challenges. And obviously, because islands are remote and we are in European cooperation, we used a lot of digitalization to facilitate that. So just as a start, that is a bit the angle from where I am coming from and how I present this project. But first of all, well, how we started. As I mentioned, we work together with primary schools on islands, and well, we here in the Netherlands, we have the Wadden Islands. One of the Wadden Islands is the Jutter on Vlieland, and what the Jutter has is they had 2 schools, a secondary and a primary schools. But because of decreasing number of school age children on the island, on its one village, the school had to merge. Well, in the Netherlands, that's quite a unique situation. But of course, if you compare it to other islands across the world, that's not so unique. So that's why the province of Friesland brought us together with the University of Groningen as well, to work together on a structure and a methodology how we can work more and learn more from other island schools across Europe. So that's how we started. We worked together with Iceland as well, the University of Akureyri, and the primary schools on the island of Hirsi. We worked together with, as I mentioned, Vlieland, but also the Greek beautiful island of Astipalaia, and some Scottish islands. Also, the island of Barra were involved here. And what we did, we had young children from like an age of, like, would say 11 years old, working together with their peers from other islands across Europe. We developed learning materials around the sustainability challenges as a basis, as a starting point for them to work together. So they did challenges around sustainable tourism, sustainable transportation, all subjects that for them as island community they would relate to. So that as a starting point. Of course, also the different partners in this project cooperated together and involved the islands in their region in this project to also write some policy recommendations to our national and regional policy makers, to also stress the importance of a primary school, and the functionality of a community center they have more on islands. So that was the main idea. But of course, Bonnie, you asked us to tell something about digitalization and how we use that. So what I'm sharing is very practical. If you could go to the next slide. Well, of course, we are meeting online, and if you have projects with islands together, I would say a lesson that we learned when we are not able to visit each other, very frequently, is that if we meet each other online, we always try to make it engaging and interactive, and make sure to not forget about the personal aspect in this cooperation. So as you can see here, we had this was a kickoff meeting of the project, and we used Miro. I think this is an online cooperation canvas board. Maybe most of you are familiar with that, but we used it to really get to know each other before we started working together. So online meetings and interactive tools, software tools. We used to facilitate the interaction. In addition, I think digitalization can also play in a very important part in cooperating when you are in remote areas and where you are not so close to each other. So that really helped. But it's very important to make it interactive and engagement.
Thank you. If you could slowly or quickly wrap up, please.
Yeah, sure. Next slide is also an example. Maybe some of the participants in this session recognize the island of Vlieland here. This was an agenda we used to go through our meeting. The next slide, and that would be my final slide. we also had a lot of connection between the kids of the different schools on the island by having them making videos for each other before they actually get into contact with each other in an online meeting or an online activity together. So I think wrapping it up, I would say use digital tools, but never forget the personal aspect and the personal matter in this. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bonnie.
Erna. Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting to see how you were able to, like you said, use it as a tool, but not as the main focus in order to enable school children to learn together. And how cool would that be if we could spread the Island School project to children on islands around the world and get them really connecting together on many, many islands everywhere. So I think, yeah, it has so much potential, and it's so important not to forget the future generations, and because at the end of the day, this will be their world and their islands. So thank you so much. I would like to now go to our next speaker, Sebastian Meldblom, CEO and co-founder of Reveal. And I am going to mess up this island name, but Sebastian, maybe you could help me out a little. Reveal at the Suomenlinna Islands in Åland in Finland. So thank you so much, Sebastian. Maybe you could help me out a little bit there with the name of the island.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Just checking, Elena, are we doing my one now or Sasha's one? I saw Sasha's was on the screen.
You can present yours now. It's fine.
Sure. Fantastic. Yeah, really good attempted Finnish, knowing famously the second hardest language in the world. Suomenlinna Islands, yes. I will make a small correction, though, as to this, that while we are setting up things together with Åland in a lot of places, Suomenlinna is actually a slightly different island in the Finnish archipelago. But nevertheless, very happy to be here today. Let me just quickly share my screen, and then we can, there we go. If someone can just confirm that they are seeing my screen.
We see your screen, but we see also the tabs around it. So if you could kind of zoom in, that would be helpful.
And
there we go. Perfect.
Is that better? Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. So my name is Sebastian. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Reveal. And while there have been so many fascinating big picture topics that have been discussed here today, this might take a smaller, like a step into the smaller tangible things that we can do together in order to take steps towards digitalization and sustainability together. But about Reveal, me and my co-founder 3 years ago realized something, that while the world is very digital and we talk about AI and we talk about these different aspects of online connectivity, the actual on-site experience of a lot of places is maybe lacking behind a bit. And what I mean with that is that we still use a lot of paper maps at world-famous UNESCO sites, museums, attractions. We use disposable headphones. We're listening to old audio guides, and we maybe get paper maps from hotel receptions when we ask where should we go to eat. And we thought that, okay, there must be something here. Why is everything so digital, yet we print so much paper when directing visitors on site? Well, we started talking to different instances, UNESCO sites, museums, cities, and we quickly realized that the background problem was, it is extremely expensive, time-consuming, and difficult to modernize visitor experiences and visitor solutions. It's not that destinations want to use paper maps as such. In fact, they would very much like to reduce the amount of paper they print. But there's a disconnect where often creating your own digital solutions is very costly, requires a lot of time, and taking, for example, smaller island societies that we've worked with, there's no budget for it. And when it comes to visitor experience, sometimes visitors don't want to download, for example, an app that only works in one place. So there was a disconnect, and this was the underlying reason for why we're sort of still stuck with these old solutions. And we thought that why not take that, if all of the destinations or a lot of destinations share this problem, why don't we take it and make it into our problem, and we build a platform onto which destinations can digitalize instead of having to create their own solutions. And in this way, we could slice the old pricing of it costing hundreds of thousands of euros, but rather costing less than printing paper maps itself. So we built a solution called Reveal that allows destinations to convert their normal paper maps and visitor guides into digital interactive guidebooks that, obviously using AI, also open up in global languages and can be used to enhance accessibility in that way. We also thought that, hey, if we really want to solve on-site experiencing for both locals and visitors, we need to be able to go deeper as well. We need to be able to create stories. How can we capture knowledge from smaller societies that, you know, stories from grandfathers talking about the war, especially here in Finland? How can we make them live forever? And that's why we also created onto the platform a possibility to create digital smart audio tours. But coming onto the islands then, obviously I mentioned we're setting up things in Åland at the moment, super many exciting projects over there. But I thought I'd present to you what we've done with Suomenlinna, which is a UNESCO site here in Finland, and an important one at that matter, considering our history. They had a problem where they obviously offered paper maps in a couple of languages, but they wanted to take a step towards a more sustainable, sort of environmentally friendly approach. But they didn't have, you know, the, let's say, the paper map if you have and now that opens up in.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sebastian, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. But if you could also quickly wrap up, but now you're back. You're back.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. My apologies. But we built a solution that now eliminates paper maps and has a possibility to spread the knowledge that the locals have in a more modern and accessible way. Just to wrap it up here, we wanted to build a solution where we, together with destinations, take a step towards sustainability. We save time and money. We can generate income together by offering these digital guided tours. And ultimately, we want to improve visitor experience together. And we're happy to say that the pilots this far have gone very, very well. And now we're actually looking for more islands specifically within Europe to further conduct pilots with. And I will leave you with that. The next time you hold a paper map, you might just be thinking of us. You can try out the QR code for yourself to see how Reveal works. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. I think it's really amazing how you talk about also capturing the stories and having them live forever, and then also taking a challenge on an island and kind of making it your problem and creating a solution for that. So yeah, that's really inspiring. Thank you. And as Sebastian said, looking for more islands. So we have a lot of islands here in the participant list. So yeah, if you want to participate, get in touch with Sebastian. On that note of getting in touch, I'm also going to pop my contact details in the chat. If you would like to follow project updates, there's a couple ways to do that. As I mentioned already, the company or the project LinkedIn page. But you could also just send me an email or fill in again this form where you registered for the webinar, and then just click the box to follow project updates. So I just popped my details there in the chat, and just send me a message. That also goes if you have any questions for the participants or about the projects in general. Okay, with that said, we have two more exciting speakers, so I hope you can stick around for that. And I would like to introduce now Sasha Vojvodic from Kreš in the island of Croatia. An island in Croatia. And he will be, he's the Services Business Area Manager at EDIH Adria. And he will discuss demand responsive transport on in the Adriatic Sea. So welcome, Sasha, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Actually, I work for Ericsson Nikola Tesla, and Ericsson Nikola Tesla is a partner in the consortium of European Digital Innovation Hub networks. So thank you very much for the invitation to the webinar. So in my presentation, I will describe how the island of Cres with the support of European Digital Innovation Hubs network, has been defining a digitalization project in the transport and mobility domain. The European Digital Hubs network, supported by the European Commission, is the driving force supporting Europe's digitalization targets within the 2030 digital decade. This network is a community of technology experts dedicated to guiding Europe's business on their path to digital transformation. It serves as a one-stop shop throughout all EU regions, equipping companies with the essential digital tools for improve their competitiveness in digitalization, upgrade their infrastructure, and boost their overall success. So Thresh Ireland has, within the EDIH support program, chosen a digital transformation project to improve public transport for the local population on the island. So next slide, please. Basically, EDIH network is consisting of different consortium, and one of them is EDIH Adria, is one of 4 EDIHs in Croatia. The consortium comprises 2 universities, 2 public-owned small companies, and 2 large industry partners. So I'm employed, I mentioned, in the Ericsson Nikola Tesla. The EU EDIH network comprises of 228 hubs in all EU member states. If you could go to the next slide, Elina. EDIHs are part of the, as I mentioned, the large effort within the EU digital policy. It's one of the building blocks supporting the 2030 digital decade framework. And the digital decade framework is a comprehensive framework that you can see on the slide that will guide all actions related to digitalization. The aim of digital decade is to ensure all aspects of the technology and innovation work for people. Within the program of European digital innovation process starts with so-called digital maturity assessment, in which the EDIH team and EDIH client jointly assess the current digitalization maturity status from different perspectives. So you can see in the next slide how this looks like. So basically, we have already assessed almost 100 organizations from the public and private sectors in Croatia. The results are shown graphically, and you can see that there is quite room for improvement in all perspectives covered by digital maturity assessment. Perspectives are digital strategy and investment, digital readiness, green digitalization, human-centric digitalization, and I circled the areas of the biggest gaps. So automation intelligence in the private sector and data management and security in the public sector has the biggest gap and the biggest room for so-called room for improvement. Then for the next in the next slide, please, about the process that EDIH has. It consists, it comprises natural steps that start with, I mentioned this digital maturity assessment, supported by boot camps. This is workshops to help EDIH client, organization, public and private sector, to choose their digitalization project, which will be further analyzed under the test before invest EDIH service. Refinement of the most prominent project is then done by devising a digitalization action plan and funding capabilities and opportunity assessment to the client. Related to the questions on the panel discussion about digital skills improvement, you can see that throughout the project duration, we offer education for different digital skill levels. Educations are developed based on all our interactions with the EDIH clients, basically. Next slide, please. So I mentioned island of Thresh. Actually, the municipality or city of Thresh Island has chosen its digitalization project from the transport and mobility domain. The main motivation for the project is their wish to improve it with an innovative approach. So basically, co-financed local public transportation with firm routes and timetables is not appropriate for serving islanders' transportation requirements. And it must be improved by digitalization and sustainable transport system. So basically, currently we are providing, we are in the process of test before invest service, and it will be done the investigation of possibilities for demand responsive transport introduction. So questionnaire for the island residents are developed. We already have almost 100 responses from the island. Traffic-related data are collected, or it's now in the collection phase. And what we will do is also analytics from anonymized data from mobile telecom network in terms of finding the origin destination matrices and commuting patterns. This will give us all those things will give us actually inputs to the development of demand responsive transportation simulation tool. And that tool simulation will consider traffic zones. You can see the different colors here with the new pick-up and drop-off locations that will give insights to the island's authorities about the crucial and, I would say, not only technical elements related to future demand responsive transport service for the islanders. And also what we'll give through that service is operational model analysis and basically proposal how to implement that new and innovative service. Next slide, please. Back to the work with other clients in Croatia, you can see that in this slide that transport and mobility, like this is only one of the domains that are interested and covered by EDIH technology support teams. So basically, we have also island of Sholta. They want to introduce artificial intelligence in municipal land control system. So this is in domain of urban planning. Then island Lošinj about communication with the islanders by means of chatbot. Again, Lošinj Islands in health domain, there is a problem about waiting lists and healthcare. We also heard that the healthcare on the island is also topic and very important. And of course, stress in traffic domain. But others are also, we also heard about energy management, about IT, information security, and other things. And those are the domain that actually gave us inputs from almost, I mentioned 100 organizations, 100 clients of the EDIH.
Wow.
Participant in Croatia. Next slide.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sasha. Can you wrap it up after this one?
This is wrap up. So this is the last slide, basically.
Thank you.
Because the islands are rural and isolated populated areas, integration and interoperability in the digital era are even more important. So this is also valid for the whole EU, but not without the islands. That's why I put this poem by Croatian poet on the final slide. So may I ask you all to read the poem yourself, and I will leave some time for reading and short reflection.
Maybe I can read it there.
More?
It looks like a beautiful poem. Mm-hmm. Waterfall flows and flows, flows one waterfall. Does my droplet contribute at all? See a rainbow in water materialize. It shines and trembles in thousand dyes. That dream in water to be able to shine helps for sure also this droplet of mine. Maybe you could help me pronounce the name?
Dobriša Cesarić. He was one of the most famous representatives of Croatian poetry.
Wow.
And I think the message of the song is eternal from different perspectives and is valid for this webinar also.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you. It's amazing to see how the European digital innovation hubs are really connecting across all these points, and also the practical examples that you showed. So thank you so much, Sasha. And now I would like to go to our final speaker of today. It's been such an exciting day with so much interesting content. So last but not least, I would like to introduce Ismene Mustafelu.
Yes.
Thank you. From the Daphne Network, who is a project manager at Asti Palea Smart Sustainable Island, and she will talk about the Asti Move application in Greece.
Yes, thank you, Bonnie. So yes, do you have the slide?
Oh, I think we do not. Can you try to share your screen?
Yes, sure. Okay, give me a second. Yes.
I see the audience is really sticking with us, so I can tell it's been a very engaging webinar today. We still have quite a lot of participants there, so thank you all. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Okay.
So we see your slide, but if you could just make it a little bit larger.
It's full now.
Okay, that's fine. Great.
Okay, so thanks for the introduction. So the Asti Move application is part of the Asti Palea Smart and Sustainable Island project, which started in 2020 and includes 4 areas. One is the charging, the other one is the production, so charging and production of energy, and then we have the smart mobility and the e-vehicles. And another one which will be autonomous driving, but it will be activated in the end of the project. So the Asti Move app has mainly 2 services. The one is the on-demand mobility service, and the other one is the car sharing system. So here I'm sharing some results from the 2 seasons that the application has been operating. There was more than 27,000 journeys in these 2 years of operation. And then on the car sharing service, which actually aims to replace the traditional rental service on the island, and it includes only e-vehicles. It has so far more than 300 users, and there are 20 vehicles available. So the aim of this application is actually to decarbonize the transport system of Asti Palea, and by electrifying the vehicles, all the vehicles, not only the rental ones, but also the public transport of the island. Just to also note down that this energy is actually aimed to be produced by renewable sources. Now the project is in the first phase of running the hybrid system, which is comprised by solar panels and battery system. And the auction has been completed, and now the winner of the tender is actually deploying the hybrid station, which aim actually to fully cover the needs of the vehicles, on the electric vehicles on the island, and part also of the consumption of the electricity consumption on the island. Then a second stage is foreseen in 2026, just before the end of the project, to reach about 80% of the total electricity demand on the island. So that's it from
Thank you.
Up.
Thank you so much. We hear so much about the abilities of islands to actually harness electric mobility, and we see that so many islands are not really doing it, although it seems like the conditions are amazing. So this is an amazing example of that, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Exactly. Actually, it's the first case in Greece, and now the government is actually planning to replicate this in more islands. We have also the Halki Island replicating this solution, the decarbonization of the transport system, and more islands will follow in the next years.
I'm
But
sure.
was the first one to run
Awesome.
this project.
So you're forging the path for the rest of us.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, yeah, it's been a very exciting day. If I could just ask you to stop your screen. Oh, perfect. There we go. It's been such an exciting day. And yeah, I want to thank again from the bottom of my heart all of our speakers, the project partners, and the organizers of this event. Just a quick reminder, the Digital Islands project will be running for the next 4 years. So we're really excited about that. And we have actually divided the project into 3 learning tracks. So this is kind of the general kickoff where we discuss digitalization overall. But the upcoming learning tracks that will develop over the next years are economy, as I mentioned, with the future of work, tourism, and circularity, public services, health, education, and governance, as well as quality of life. So do keep an eye on us, and we also invite all of you to collaborate with the project. We would like to open it up to islands around the world, not just our partner network. So yeah, follow us on LinkedIn. If you prefer to send an email, it's in the chat. And hope to see you all soon one day on an island, maybe even digitally. So thank you all so much.